All right. Welcome, folks, to the August edition of Power Hug. We've got the recording going for those that weren't able to make it live today. Just wanted to remind you, if you haven't joined us on the community and on YouTube, you can do so from the link on the side there, aka.ms/powerhug, and at Power Platform Hug on YouTube. Feel free to use the QR code if you prefer. We are a community for Power Platform admins, makers, and users to learn from one another. And we are looking for folks from the community to come and present and lead us on these sessions. We meet the fourth Thursday of each month. Our topics are included but not limited to stories of governance and best practices, how you've helped users adopt the platform, maybe a use case or a story of an ROI, a particular ROI achieved or realized, and anything else to promote citizen development, lessons learned, or really anything you might see as pertinent to the broader community here, right? We want to kind of have a rising tide that lifts all boats. We're very near some upcoming events here. I'm going to have Randall talk about those just a little bit, and we'll get started with Adam Hallbeck this week.
Great, thanks, Scott. So some of the upcoming events we have next week, actually, from 1 to 1:45 Eastern time, we have another team that is actually discussing a nurse retention solution built on Power Platform. So have a listen. You can register at aka.ms/MIH-NRS and sign up for that event. And again, that's next week, Thursday. And then we have the Power Platform Conference happening in September. Scott and I are both going to be there and attending live, and we're hoping to host a few events with you all. So if you come on out, by all means, take a visit and meet with us there. Then afterward, we're going to do a Power Platform Conference recap. So 1 week after the conference, we're going to hit some special guests up to come and visit us in the UG. And we're going to actually cover off on some of the favorite events and hopefully get some of the attendees and Power Hug members that were actually at the conference to contribute on what their latest announcements, events, sessions, and share that with their wider community. And hopefully people can go back and listen to those things and catch up on those items. And then we had Lily Ho that was going to present today. But due to some conflicts, we had to bump that out 1 month. So we're actually planning to have her come back and revisit in October. We're going to go through some infrastructure automation stories using Power Platform and Azure together out at AbbVie. And then lastly, we have in November, Ignite. So I think registration has been opened up for that now at this point. Feel free to start taking a look and registering for that event as well. And then as far as today goes, we have Adam Hallbeck joining us. He is a senior technology specialist here at Microsoft. He's going to be presenting a story around revolutionizing your workflow with Power Platform. So with that, feel free to come in with any questions through chat or Q&A. We'll get those asked to Adam as he's presenting. But with that, Adam, I'll hand off to you and feel free to run with it.
Very cool. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Randall, and welcome everybody. I'm going to steal the screen here. We're going to step through some slide material first to set the stage, and then we'll jump into the meat and potatoes of what we got cooking for today. So in terms of what we're going to step through, today really is understanding the whys and then seeing some of the hows in action of moving from more static workflow management solutions to much more dynamic workflow management solutions. So we're going to talk a little bit of the value of the Power Platform as it pertains to workflow management. So not just your data, but automation, analytics, et cetera. And then we're going to zoom in on a particular use case I built some assets for. So it was around development projects for a healthcare network. So building new clinics, building new wings of hospitals, these construction projects and resource management and managing all of that. So what we're going to zoom in on within that solution itself is, the core of it, project and project lifestyle management, or life cycle management, notes and activity management. So different ways of seeing and filling daily activities and planning activities, And then we're going to get into a little bit of a custom build for the projects themselves, how they come to life, data that's captured, that includes the project tasks, project costs and forecasting capabilities, and then jump over into teams and see how that looks and feels. And we're going to see automation and intelligence throughout as well. So to set the stage, and I don't want to bore anybody, so I'll try to get through this stuff as quickly as possible. But when we're thinking about the tools used to manage straightforward workloads or business processes, you might yourself be using something like Microsoft Excel, to have your table or to throw in a pivot chart or what have you. So we all know and love Excel. It's the spreadsheet zenith. It's easy to use. Almost everyone either has it in hand and uses it regularly or has used it in the past. And it's tried and true. How many decades has Excel been on the block? I remember seeing a couple of old like OG commercials on YouTube or something the other week, and they just floored me. Pretty good stuff. But hey, Excel is really the cornerstone of what I'm kind of labeling worksheet tools here. Another one that really brought the use case and the build that we're going to take a look at today to life and why it was created was we had a customer who was using Smartsheet for some, I would say, pretty straightforward project management processes. But we took that as a foundation and mocked up the Power Platform experience against that project management, that network development use case. But Smartsheet, if you're not familiar with it, big player in the project, task, and resource management solution space. A lot of folks use it for project management, and we'll see how we can do that in Power here. But it has an almost, if you're not familiar with it, almost Excel or Google Sheet-like experience. It does include some straightforward automation and collaboration capabilities, and a little bit more by way of UI and user experience controls and widgets. And so you can make a few screens pop, and there are some. I mentioned the lightweight automation and collaboration capabilities, but the why of looking at something like an Excel or Smartsheet, hey, these are familiar tools. They're easy to work with and pick up. Oftentimes, if you're at work or you've got a home office or an M365 license, you've got Excel, and these things are either free, cheap, or highly available. This one comes with a little caveat: avoiding IT red tape. Some of the customers that we work with, they've got small pockets of users, maybe some departments that, they're not working with PHI, they're not working with sensitive data. They simply need like a task management solution that has a little bit more horsepower to it. But there are some asterisks when it comes to the data that you're working with. If you have more advanced or sensitive use cases or workloads or data that you're hands-on with, within the tool. But then the use cases too. Excel. Hey, that really is geared for some of the like financials, forecasting. I mentioned like the pivot tables, and you can throw some fancy macros in there and get pretty creative and advanced with it, with a little, pro code, if you want to call it that. But those use cases are pretty straightforward. Now, what if we could take maybe a straightforward use case that might, you're left wanting a little bit more. Maybe you need some more advanced automation, or maybe you need truly relational data without leveraging VLOOKUPs, or maybe you have intelligence needs. Maybe your organization has an AI strategy that you're looking to explore Power Platform against. So that's where we can use the toolbox that we all know and love with the Power Platform to not just have a static sheet with parent-child data or some simple automation. Hey, we can go full hyper automation. We can go with our data services. We can be managed with it. So, it is very compelling to take a business process that's being owned and managed in something like Excel or something like Smartsheet, and see how you can make that come to life, with automation, intelligence, and insights, BI. But But the why of moving to Power, looking at something like the Power Platform, this is also familiar. This is these are Microsoft tools. We've got like experiences, like UIs across our products. It is easy to use as well, but we have boundless scope. So it's not just simple task management. It's not just parent-child tasks and dependencies and simple Gantt charts and simple automations. We used to say a number of years ago, and still, the Power Platform affords you no cliffs. So, there's not a cliff you're going to reach where you go, oh, hands up, we can't do it because we're limited. We have the low code solutions in Power, but we also have the one Microsoft toolbox to reach into: Azure, Modern Work Solutions, M365, Pro Dev, low code, across the gamut. So I say boundless scope because we really can cross that spectrum with all the capabilities we have, not just for low code, but extensibility with other services and products. Relational multimodal data. So, with Smartsheet or with Excel, you're probably not working with media too much. Attachments, sure, but there's the modality conversation and component, but there's also the relational database. You can stitch together, like I said, VLOOKUPs and dependent worksheets and whatnot, or in Smartsheet, having some of those sheets tied together. But with Dataverse and with the Power Platform, you have that truly relational database. You have all those data services. It's cost effective. You've got governance controls. So that's one thing. And I wanted to throw a little anecdote in here. John Landgrave, one of our global black belts for Power Platform, I think the phrase, and John, if you ever watch this, I apologize if I'm butchering it here, but I think that his phrase was, you can do a heck of a lot of damage with an Excel sheet that you're sharing around, when you're thinking about data exfiltration or DLP or governance controls. So, when I mentioned why people are using worksheet solutions, and there's that note of that bullet point of avoiding red tape or IT red tape, sometimes that's not the case, and maybe sometimes we do want a foundation of governance and controlling the connections and controlling the capabilities that somebody has at their fingertips, and we want to make that more robust, and we want to build that as a foundation to build upon, which Power provides. You can still upskill quickly with Power. And then, the use cases. I mentioned the sweet spot use cases for worksheet solutions, financials, forecasting, etc. But hey, we've got Power for anything. This can be any person, any department, any maker, if we want to jump into citizen development. But really, I'll sort of revisit and punctuate all of this with hyper automation, intelligence, and insights. So we've got the breadth and depth of Power Automate, not just digital process automation with cloud flows, but robotic process automation, process mining, business process management by way of business process flows. We've got AI, we've got Copilot in our sidecar to help us use natural language to query, to filter, to search our data that's in these, that lives in these applications and solutions. And hey, this is insightful. We have real-time insights. We have BI capabilities that are baked into this as well. So that said, we're at 18 after. Let's go take a look at this, the solution that I put together. So to revisit the use case, just so we have a little bearing here, working with a healthcare organization that had essentially a construction team. So they had project managers who were orchestrating resources for new clinic builds or building new wings on hospitals, breaking new ground for actual physical brick and mortar buildings. So they have, they've got leadership, they've got project managers, they're working with general contractors, they're working with development professionals internally. And they were using Smartsheet for that. So they had, if you think about a master list of project tasks with child tasks and resources assigned and whatnot, they were essentially working off of a sheet that had some header information and a number of project tasks and milestones and Gantt charts and whatnot. And so they were looking at Power Platform, looking at Power Apps, but the whole toolbox, as a means of, I'll use the phrase again, bringing this workflow to life, making it much more dynamic. So moving off of a static worksheet-based process, and using something that was pretty tightly controlled and didn't have a ton of extensibility, looking at Power Apps, Automate, Copilot Studio, etc., to bring it to life, to make it more intelligent, to make it more automated. So the use case here is project management. And this is a pretty lightweight build. You might see things out in the marketplace, or even our own marketplace with Dynamics 365 project operations. This is a solution that lives between something like a smart sheet and something that is full bore project operations tied into your ERP, syncing your bookable resource data. This is that middle ground. So if that's too much to bite off, if you're not looking for soup to nuts, full project management, turn the keys and go, big bang first party application experience, this is probably going to be something that you'll want to take a look at. So let's go jump into the solution, and I can walk you through what we're taking a look at. So, as a development professional, or as a project manager, the first thing I'm going to do when I log in is see my control tower, like see my 10K of all the projects that I have in flight, project costs that are rolling month by month, any project tasks. The beauty of the native dashboards within Power Apps here is all of this is interactive. So I'm logging in, I'm taking a look, I'll collapse the site menu down here, or the site map. So I've got my active projects, project tasks, and rolling project costs by project task type. So I have all of this in my fingertips from the get-go, and all this is interactive. So if I pop out any of these charts, any of these widgets, if I want to take a look at all of my complete project tasks, I can drill down by when they were complete, end time here. Maybe I want an area chart here. So I can see that rolling over time, and all of this is interactive. So it's not a static visualization. It's not something that is a pretty picture. It's dynamic, it's interactive, and you can drill down to multiple levels or bring it back up to the parent level, the chart you were seeing on the dashboard initially, and there you go. Over off to the right, here's where I have a little bit, there's a little bit of noise here, but if I fly this out, this is where we can hover over and see month by month what are the total project costs across our portfolio. So if I want to get a beat on any P&L or any top line, any financials on a month by month basis, you can see I've got my legend up top. So if I wanted to drill down just into like September costs, or if I wanted to quickly get some insights, glean some insights month over month, you can see that we've got the cost types. So we have, different project costs, capital expense, soft, hard, etc. And I can see that in a month by month fashion. So starting my day, taking a look at, anything that draws attention, that might need attention right off the bat. Now this is the native dashboard experience. This is the native BI experience. We obviously can, look at Power BI if we had more advanced visualizations, if we wanted a more advanced report that had multiple tabs. This is just a quick example, but we can pop those out and embed those here as well. Now, the next thing I want to do, and you can see that we're living in this my work bucket, planning activities. Do we have phone calls? Do we have tasks to close out? Do we have appointments that might be on deck? We can drill down and see what we got on deck. But we can also, if I go select all here and go back to the master list, we can include different controls. So if we don't want to just work off of a read-only or an editable grid, and if I take a look at, I think March was where I had some of that demo data here. We can include the calendar controls, the calendar visuals. So I get a quick peek into my day, my agenda, maybe your team's agenda. So if you're a project manager and you want a global perspective on any team members or their critical tasks or planning tasks against the projects that you're working on, hey, we can include that in a calendar view. And there are a lot of other controls and ways to display this data that make it a lot more interactive. So, we've got calendar controls, we've got Kanban controls to be able to manage the process and the flow as well. But this is where I'm managing and seeing those activities. The nice thing is, hey, just like our dashboards, we can see visualizations next to the raw data. So if I drill into owner and priority, hey, I can go into low priority, high priority, at-risk priority activities, things that require my attention or require the team's attention, and I can still drill down based on the data available. Now, moving to projects. So this is where I think I want to go to. I'm going to stop sharing the deck just so I have my little storyboard off to the side. Looking at the projects. So, if you're a portfolio manager, if you're a project manager that is over top of multiple projects, you're going to have not just one record, not just two records. You're going to have a list to work with here. Now, there are 51 total projects you'll see in the bottom left here. So if I don't have the report or the dashboard or some of that dynamic or interactive data that I want, or maybe that's not on my control tower dashboard and I want to play around with creating my own, you can see at the top, before we even get into a specific project record, we can visualize the view. So if you haven't played around with the view visualizations using Power BI, please do so. They're great. They're snappy, they're performant, and the nice thing is you're going to get a version 1, a V1 dashboard just by simply clicking that button and taking all of the data available and working with the different visuals that are going to pop up here. But then you can configure that. You can play around with that. So you can see the data that it automatically scooped in and the attributes that it's focusing on the right-hand side. And then I can take any of these charts here and configure them. So if I don't want a clustered bar, say I want a donut, say I want to add new attributes like project health across all of those buckets of good, attention, or poor. This is where we can configure a bespoke dashboard using Power BI capabilities. And then up top here, you can show the raw data, but hey, we can save that and include that as our own dashboard as well. So we have interactive data. The business intelligence capabilities that are baked into Power Apps are better than ever. And then you have the added bonus of being able to bring in deeper, richer data experiences with the full toolbox of Power BI as well. So let's jump into a project. I've got a lot here, but hey, this name here, Deal of the Century, that's catching my eye. So I'm gonna go crack into that one. There's a good amount of data on the form here, so I'm not going to walk through everything, but because this was for like hospital, expansions and understanding the financial dimensions of what that project is going to take at both the parent level as well as discrete task levels, as well as understanding things like total bed counts that are required for that new hospital build. You can see that we've got some discrete numbers here and they're all rolled up at the bottom. So we've got some dynamic attributes that are living on the form here. I mentioned that we have many ways of displaying data. So we can visualize views or lists of data with different controls, but we can also visualize discrete attributes with different controls. So this is a simple slider that plugs in, an integer in a field behind the scenes. But to make these experiences, these user experiences, more pleasing, more interactive, more engaging for those that are logging in and using these things every day, it's a healthy practice to evaluate, hey, can we make this pop? Can we make this a little bit more engaging for our users? And these are the out of the box, multi-selects and lookups and everything on the form here. But we've got our overall project summary information on the left, which includes, if we have any external systems that we need to map GUIDs to or IDs to, just a cross-reference, or if we've got integrations or secondary keys that we need to hook into, this is where we've got, an Oracle ID. The confidence in whether we're going to build this or not, the project phase, and then like if this is a joint venture. So if we're getting funding from somebody else, if we're getting grant funding, or if there are other financial contributors to this project, this is where we want to understand not just where the project is by phase, but who's funding this, and then you can see what is the split. So this is where we have, a 52-48 split on our funding versus any external party or other department or other funding bucket brought in here. And then on the right-hand side, the total summary. So fiscal year, we've got the total project cost in the last updated when it was last rolled up. So this is taking into account all of the child project tasks and costs and whatnot that we'll see in a second. But then we've got some other financial dimensions broken out on the right-hand side that play into that total as well. So I'll go to activities and attachments. So this is where we can, probably all familiar with the timeline. I've got notes included. So if I go to view more here, we can view media in line. So here's a project timeline and sort of some best practices on building your project charters and different resources that we have. We can also download this right from the timeline. We also have the ability to set bookmarks on these timelines. So essentially building in collections of different activity types and advanced filters that, if I drill down into this little filter icon, I can find the specific task I'm looking for. And these are all going to be project planning tasks. So meetings, phone calls, notes and updates, and having that longitudinal history of that project. Now, this is where we start to get into some of the fun stuff. If you've been configuring or working with Power Apps for a while, you'll probably notice that front and center, hey, that doesn't look like a control I've been able to use or that comes out of the box. But the use case dictated that, hey, we need a Gantt chart. We need, as a project manager, I'm probably very used to seeing not just my resources and tasks, but I want to visualize those milestones. So here we have a control. And if you haven't been to it, this control is coming from the PCF gallery. So you can see the URL up top, pcf.gallery. Community-driven forum for a lot of really great PCF controls. So this was a universal Gantt control, and shout out and props to Maxim. That is our author here, and you can find their LinkedIn and Git repo if you want to go check that out. But this is a control that was really easy to load. So it comes in a solution, zip file. You bring it into your environment, and the configuration experience is really straightforward. You have not just the ability to point to, like, this is a custom table. So this is a project task table that I'm working with. So you have the ability to set your displays. You have the ability to configure the coloration, any shading you want in here. And then you'll see if I hover over any of these project tasks, there's a little splitter. So there's a little flyout on critical information. This is project task 3. It's color-coded red because we're a little behind. But if I wanted to update the progress, I can slide this. So we've got a dynamic slider that will inform the progress. But these are also very dynamic. So as I slide these tasks around, you can see that on the left-hand side, the start and end time are updating in real time. If I needed to kick these timelines out at all, I can do that. Update some progress sliders along the way. I've got my day, week, month, views here. So we can get really dynamic with how we're visualizing those project tasks, and the tasks themselves aren't anything too fancy. Here's the raw data in an editable grid. So where I can make those simple adjustments as a project manager up top in a very visual fashion. Down below, if I wanted to, say, knock one of these tasks out, and play with any of these values here, or even drill into the task itself or create a new one. This is where we can, if I deselect that, create a new project task right on the fly. So I'm not changing screens. We've got our quick create form that'll fly out on the right-hand side. If we needed to drop a new task in. So everything's very snappy, very dynamic. We've got kind of this single pane of glass to see my project, my progress, resource assignments, project tasks themselves in a single pane of glass. I'll pause there. Any questions so far after getting through some of the high level and project specific components before we press on? All right.
So far, so good, Adam.
Perfect. To kind of close this out, this is a peek into how we can make these user experiences a little bit more pleasing, how we can make them dynamic, how we can stitch together critical data into these consolidated spaces, these forms. Moving on to project costs. This was a fun one to design. So if you've worked in financials, you know that if a financial spreadsheet it's pretty flat, and you've got month over month, your column and your table structure is flattened and almost transposed. So, if you work in databases, if you work in Dataverse, if you work in SQL, and you see financials, you sometimes go, that's going to be tricky, or how do we design that appropriately for a relational database? So it did take a little bit of big thinks, but essentially, if I go into a discrete record here, you can kind of see how I set it up. So this is an editable grid if I wanted to make changes on the fly, but here we have the parent project. We've got, I have a master data set of fiscal years. What I intended to build in here too, or something that will probably come in the future, is tying these project costs to either direct activities, like the project tasks, or the tasks as well as the resources that are assigned to these costs. And so we have we've got a much more dimensional, multi-dimensional cost breakdown, and we can use that for our financial analytics and whatnot. But because we need to bridge the gap between relational database and pleasant user experiences, I wanted to include some of the familiar forecasting capabilities that a forecaster might have. So if you're a project manager and going in, taking a look at the costs, here I have the subgrid view. I can drill into my charts to see the month over month views, go project cost by month to see where we might be ballooning, where we might be dipping, and see those trends. But I also have, if you've ever worked with Word templates or Excel templates, they're really nifty. And if I fire up this Excel template for project cost forecasting and just pop it open in Excel Online here, this is where I can get that more familiar from a financial manager or forecaster perspective. Here's more of the table view, but you can see I included a tab in the bottom left for forecasting. So I'll click into that and hide the pivot settings and just fly this out so we can see our numbers. So here we have, this is what I was talking about when I mentioned like the flat, like the financial dimension, or the the forecasting sort of view. So you can see April, May, June, July. We have that rolling month by month. We can see our totals. And if I wanted to make any adjustments here, if I wanted to write back to Dataverse, because this is an Excel template that's tied to this record, we will be able to make those updates on the fly if we wanted to have this sort of experience. So the value here is that we can bridge the gap between like a Power Apps experience, a relational data experience, as well, all the way to those that might be living in those worksheet experiences, or those that might be very familiar with forecasting processes that require this flatter month-over-month perspective on financial data. And that's the long and short of the project. Now you'll notice that we didn't touch on the business process flow at all. So what I want to do here is show you the full experience. So we'll revert this back to the first stage. For project management specifically, they start in their pro forma and initial approvals. So getting their header information, getting the critical information required, making sure that we have the targeted completion date, making sure that we have our executive sponsor or operational leadership in the mix, and making sure that our confidence is definite before we press forward. So do a quick peek. Yep, Janice, VP of Development. This looks good. We're going to go to the next stage. So I'm managing my process. This is also a dynamic process flow that can branch. But you'll see that once we have our core financial information set, we're going to kick off a budget approval. So I'll click Select to Send, and I'll click Approval Sent, and I'll just save this record. So we're now in our marketplace approvals before we, well before we break ground, but even pre-team resourcing. This visual process flow is going to kick off a Power Automate flow, which will run an approval process for us to reach out to Janice, that VP of development, tap her on the shoulder. So what I'll do now is I'm sort of switching personas, and I'll jump into Teams as Janice, our VP of development. So now in Teams, I should have a notification that comes my way here with Power Automate approvals any second. And now I'm doing the art of the vamp because it's going to take just a sec. But there we go. Ala Lavore sent you a request, so I'll click on that. And this is going to dynamically scoop up the project information that's critical for the approval. So here we have the project name that we were just living in. We have the VP of development, that persona, that contact that was living in that lookup field here. And then we've got some guidelines. So this is where, you're going to approve the budget and what is the outcome, reject the budget, what is the outcome, request budget review. So a little bit of clarity on what to do to kind of guide that VP of development that might not be living in these apps every day, that simply needs to put the rubber stamp down and say, yes, this is good. Yes, we have the funding for this. Yes, we can press forward, or needs attention. So if I scroll down just a little bit, we've got a link to that project right here. So this is that record in Power Apps we were just taking a look at, as well as the living history of this request. So we have that longitudinal breakdown of what happened and when. I can take more actions, cancel it, follow up with it later, reassign it to somebody. But I'm gonna say we are going to looks good, ship it, and approve the budget. Now, once this goes back to Power Automate, there will be a couple of things that happen here. Whoever requested the approval is going to get a notification. We have an email that's going to fire out. So based on the outcome, whether it was approved, whether it needs a little bit of attention, a zoom in, whether it was rejected for whatever reason, we're going to get that information here. So, hey, budget's been approved for Deal of the Century. That's the project we were working on. Here's the outcome. And then I have a link to that project with the comments that we just put in real time in that approval. Now, the other thing that's going to happen is, as the project manager or the person that requested the approval, if I go back and I'll switch my persona back to the project manager. If I go back in to the application here and I'm doing my thing, I'm living on a record, I'm maybe on my dashboard, you'll see again in real time, hey, that budget was approved. We get an in-app notification. So if I can take a look at my notifications list here, we have dynamic data coming into that notification, any to-dos, follow-ups, comments that are included. But since we walked you through that process, we can just duck out of that. So we have the means of using our hyperautomation capabilities to make sure we're orchestrating effectively and we're collaborating effectively in real time. So it's not like we have to stitch together a clunky process and have somebody log in at a certain day or schedule something at a certain time. We can. I talked earlier about breathing life into these workflows, or we kind of led off with revolutionizing your workflows, but really that really to me means getting the right data to the right person at the right time for the right reasons. And we can do that through these different experiences, through Power Apps like this, through Power Automate. And if we go back to Teams, hey, if your end users are much more comfortable living in a front door of Teams, we can go drop that in to a channel. So here I have a tab up top for that project tracker. We can live right out of Teams with this Power App. If I expand this, we'll get the broader experience. So I can see all of my recent records we were just floating through and have everything at my fingertips through a front door of Microsoft Teams. I'm going to do one quick check on my storyboard to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Any questions that have come through while I do a quick spot check? I think
nothing so far. We'll throw the link to the PCF controls with the YouTube video when we post it for folks. Otherwise,
very cool. that, that really is the long and short of what I wanted to show the team today. If I go back to the app here, like Scott said, we can definitely share like the PCF gallery as a great resource to make some of these experiences pop. Whether that's a chart, whether that's a list of data, whether that's a discrete attribute. And I do have additional resources. So if you are wondering, hey, I want to get my hands on, or I want to see a demo, or let's talk about this, again, to revisit the use case, this was a team looking to better automate their processes. Ooh, I forgot one thing. Scott, I forgot a thing, and it's a big thing. So I'm gonna just pause here. Along with like just making some of these things easier, like visualize this view. How dare I sleep on Copilot? So, if you want to start working, either querying your data or asking about trends, or using natural language to work and execute within the context of your application, we've got in the productivity pane on the right-hand side here, Copilot. So, like, what is the total cost for and then if I put a little slash in here, and that'll bring up all of the tables and data that I have reach to, so you can see account contact. If I go to the ellipses here, I can go filter between these records. I can see deal of the centuries in the list here already. So I can start asking questions of this, or like how many project tasks are in poor status standing. Let's see if this gives me a little insight. I can be doing my thing. I can be going through my process in my workflow, either as a project manager or a specific project resource or leadership, and have this flyout open. Oh, 0 project tasks in poor standing. That's great. But we can actually use Copilot to, you can see if I go to my prompts here, act, analyze, and ask. So if I wanted a little bit more insight on the data that I have here, we can use natural language instead of going through, filter, like view filters and setting up my query and going through attributes and joins and all these other things. I can fly open Copilot here, which is rooted in if I go to restart here, it's anchored in the data here. So our projects, tasks, costs, fiscal years, et cetera, as well as accounts, contacts, and anything else that might be, any other tables that might be in the application. So one more shout out to the Copilot. Forgot about that one, but that also builds those, not just more pleasant experiences, but powerful experiences, because we're using natural language. And earlier we talked about upskilling, and part of that is adoption. And this is a great tool for users to dip the toe into navigating and understanding all of the data that might be living in your application. So that's it. That's all I got. Don't see anything in the chat myself. So, yep.
I think Adam's chair probably buzzed when you didn't mention Copilot until the very end of the conversation.
The ears started burning a little bit.
All right. I'll take back over real quick just to close this up. Really appreciate everybody taking some time today, and a special thanks to Adam, a great colleague of ours. He's a wizard on the demo sticks. That demo he built is one of both Randall and my favorites. We encourage you to reach out to all of us if you have any questions regarding this demo build. And we're here the 4th Thursday of every month. Randall and I will be at the conference in Las Vegas next month. Once the Hoover app comes out, please reach out to us. Make some time, or find us on the floor, or come to one of our happy hours, things like that. We can get you some invitations if you're interested. There's gonna be a lot going on all day, all night, through the evenings. So if you're looking for something to do while you're there, don't hesitate to reach out to Randall and I. And then if you're not able to attend, we'll be back right after the conference to do kind of a recap, some highlights, some of our favorite announcements and sessions. And we'll have some special guests for that. Again, if you're not following us on YouTube and joining the community directly, you've got the links there. And reach out to Randall, myself, and Mary Brummer if you're ever interested in presenting a use case or giving a quick talk to the Power Hug group. We are booking for, I believe, November, December timeframe at the moment. but we can always schedule you out further if you need a little bit more time. And again, thank you all for taking some time with us today.
Thanks, love.
Thanks, Adam.